Grace Miller stood outside Le Chateau Bridal, smoothing her hands over the soft denim of her jeans, feeling a mix of excitement and nervous energy stir inside her. It was her first wedding dress shopping trip. Despite all the glossy images she had seen online, nothing compared to standing in front of a real bridal salon, with elegant displays twinkling behind the glass. This is it, she thought. This is the moment every little girl dreams about. Inside, chandeliers sparkled over rows of pristine gowns. Everything smelled faintly of fresh roses and expensive perfume. Grace stepped through the door, her heart lifting, until she caught the glance of the woman at the counter. The assistant, a tall woman with platinum hair tucked in a tight bun, offered a thin, polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hello," Grace said warmly. "I'm looking for a wedding dress. I actually called yesterday and talked to someone about one in your display." The assistant nodded stiffly. "Feel free to look around," she said, then turned her attention back to folding napkins behind the counter. Grace hesitated, then made her way slowly among the rows of gowns. She spotted the dress almost immediately, the one she had fallen in love with online. A stunning off-shoulder silk number, delicate embroidery glinting across the bodice. Heart-pounding, she reached out to gently touch the fabric. A sharp voice sliced through the air. "Please don't touch the dress," the assistant said, appearing at her elbow. Grace blinked in surprise. "Why? Can't I try it?" The woman folded her arms. "Once you've paid for it, you can try it." Grace frowned, confused. "But it might not fit. You have fitting rooms, so I want to try it on first and then pay for it." The assistant's smile was almost condescending. "Yes, we have changing rooms so that customers can try on the things they bought after they've paid for them." Grace stared at her, disbelief thick in her throat. "You've got to be kidding me. This is the first time I've ever heard that I can't try on the dress. It's our policy, I don't make the rules," the woman said briskly, shrugging as if it were obvious. "Wow, well, okay," Grace muttered, stepping back from the gown. Her cheeks burned, but she tried to stay calm. "Then what?" The assistant seemed to sense her discomfort and quickly added, "Agreed, you can count it." "The thing is," she said, voice dropping as if revealing some confidential secret, "this one was discounted, but this special promotion has ended. So it's more expensive now." Grace felt her stomach drop. "I called you yesterday, and we discussed the price." "It wasn't me you spoke to," the assistant said sharply. "And as I said, that deal has expired." Grace opened her mouth, then closed it, at a loss. She had spoken to someone, kind, professional, helpful, who had assured her the price would be honored if she came today. And here she was, being told it had mysteriously jumped by hundreds of dollars overnight. It was subtle, but the message was clear. She wasn't welcome here. The shop was almost empty, except for one other bride, a young white woman, laughing with her mother as they tried on dress after dress, the staff fluttering around them like a tin of bees. Meanwhile, Grace felt like an intruder. The assistant tapped her manicured nails on the counter. "Well, are you buying it?" I need a minute," Grace stammered, stepping aside. In the corner of the boutique, Grace pretended to study a catalog, her mind racing. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. But deep down, she knew. She had felt at the moment she stepped inside the cold reception, the suspicious glances, the rules that somehow applied only to her. Grace took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I'm not going to let this break me," she thought. "Not today." She gave the dress one last lingering look, sadness pooling behind her ribs. With her head high and dignity intact, she turned on her heel and walked out the door. She didn't have the dress yet. She didn't have justice yet. But one thing was certain, this was not the end of her story. The door closed behind Grace with a soft chime, but her heart was pounding like a drum. Outside, the world bustled as usual. Couples strolled by, kids laughed in a nearby park, but inside her, everything felt bruised. Was I just discriminated against? The thought circled in her mind like a storm cloud. She wasn't the type to jump to conclusions, but something about the entire interaction in the boutique reeked of more than just bad customer service. Still, she hadn't come this far to be pushed out so easily. She paced up and down the sidewalk for a moment, then turned on her heel and marched back inside the salon. The assistant looked up, visibly surprised. "Back so soon?" she asked flatly. "Yes," Grace said calmly, though her pulse betrayed her. "I'd like to speak to the manager, please." The woman's lips curled ever so slightly. "She's not available. But I'm happy to help you." "You weren't exactly helpful the first time," Grace replied, her voice tight. Before the assistant could respond, a tall, well-dressed blonde bride and her mother walked in. They both exuded elegance and money. The assistant lit up instantly. "Oh, hello. Welcome back, Miss Chambers," she said, her entire demeanor transforming. "Your gown just arrived. Would you like some champagne while we prep the fitting room?" Grace stepped aside, watching in disbelief as a junior stylist rushed out with a tray of flutes. The assistant giggled with the women as if they were lifelong friends. The contrast hit Grace like a slap. "So let me get this straight," she said loudly, drawing their attention. "They get offered champagne, a private fitting room, and the dress already waiting. I'm told not to touch anything and that I have to pay before trying anything on." The boutique fell into a hush. The blonde bride looked awkwardly at Grace, then at the assistant. "I'm sorry," the bride said, hesitant. "We didn't mean to interrupt." "You didn't," Grace said gently. "You were just treated like a valued customer. That's what I expected too." The assistant stepped forward, her voice clipped. "Miss, I think it's time you left. You're clearly agitated, and you're making our other guests uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable?" Grace repeated, eyebrows raised. "Is that what you call it when a black woman asks to be treated with the same respect?" The blonde bride's mother looked horrified. I'm sure there's just been a misunderstanding." "Oh, there's no misunderstanding," Grace said firmly. "I came here to find my wedding dress. I called ahead, confirmed the price, and was excited. But when I walked in, your staff made it very clear I didn't belong." The assistant crossed her arms. "This isn't about race. It's about attitude." Grace chuckled, but it wasn't amused. "Right. My attitude changed after you told me I couldn't even try on a dress unless I bought it first." From the back of the store, another consultant emerged, an older woman with silver hair and an air of quiet authority. "What's going on out here?" she asked. "Nothing," the assistant said quickly. "Just a customer causing a scene." "I'm not causing a scene," Grace said, turning to the new woman. "I just want to know why I'm being treated so differently. Why the rules changed. Why the price of a dress suddenly tripled the moment I walked in." The older woman studied Grace, then looked at the assistant, who squirmed under her gaze. "I'll take it from here," the older consultant said calmly. "Miss Grace. Grace Miller." "Miss Miller," she said with a nod. "Would you mind stepping into the back with me?" Grace hesitated, then followed her through a velvet curtain into a small office, the door closing quietly behind them. The woman sat down and motioned for Grace to do the same. "I'm Claire. I manage the boutique." Grace looked her in the eye. "Then I'm glad you're here. Because something's seriously wrong with how customers are being treated." Claire sighed, as if this wasn't the first time she'd had to clean up someone else's mess. "Tell me everything." Grace sat straight back in the small office, fingers laced tightly in her lap as Claire, the manager, listened without interrupting. The silence between her words was thick, charged with the weight of what had happened. And when I pointed out the policy didn't make sense, she just repeated that she doesn't make the rules. Then suddenly, the dress I called about tripled in price. "I know what this was about, Claire. It wasn't customer service, it was judgment." Claire exhaled slowly and rubbed her temples. "I'm not going to insult you by pretending that what you experienced was acceptable." Grace blinked. That wasn't the response she'd expected. "I've had complaints before," Claire admitted. "About Vanessa. But nothing this blatant. We're a boutique, Miss Miller, not a courtroom, but I still believe in fairness." "And what happened out there?" Her voice hardened. "It wasn't fair." Grace's posture softened slightly, but her expression remained guarded. "So, what happens now? Do you write it off as another, unfortunate misunderstanding and tell me she'll be spoken to?" Claire met her gaze. "No. I'm not here to placate you. I'm here to fix it. I want you to have the experience you deserve, and more importantly, I want to hold my staff accountable." Grace hesitated. "Even if that means acknowledging she treated me that way because of the color of my skin?" Claire nodded. "Especially if that's what it means." For the first time since walking through the boutique doors, Grace felt something stir, hope. But it was laced with caution. Claire continued, "If you'd like, I can personally assist you in trying on the dress. And I will honor the price quoted to you over the phone." Grace gave a small, bitter laugh. "After all that, you expect me to still buy a dress here?" "No," Claire said gently. "I hope you will. But I also understand if you don't. What I want, what I owe you, is a sincere apology and a chance to do better. Whether you accept it is up to you." There was a soft knock at the door. Claire opened it slightly, speaking in hushed tones to someone outside. Grace caught fragments. "No, she's with me now." "Yes, I'll address it." Claire returned, closing the door with finality. "Was that Vanessa?" Grace asked. Claire's expression didn't change. She wanted to know if you were still making a scene. Grace's chest tightened. Unbelievable. I'll be honest with you, Miss Miller. I've let her slide too many times because she performs well with high-end clients. But there's no place for prejudice here. I've already made some calls to HR. She'll be on leave while we investigate further. Grace nodded slowly. Thank you. But that doesn't undo what happened. It's not just about me. How many other women walked in here and left feeling like they didn't belong? How many stayed silent? Claire sat down again, her voice low. I'd like to offer you something more. Not as a bribe. As a bridge. If you're willing, I'd like to feature your story in our upcoming bridal showcase campaign. Real brides. Real voices. We've never done it before, but maybe it's time. Grace was stunned. You want me to be in a campaign? After your boutique tried to humiliate me. Because of that, Claire said simply. Because your voice matters, and it deserves to be heard, loudly and beautifully. Grace didn't respond right away. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the street. Life was going on as if nothing had happened, but inside her, something was shifting. For the first time, she wasn't swallowing the shame. She was using it. I'm not sure yet, she said finally. But I'm not done talking about this. And I won't pretend it didn't happen. Claire nodded with respect. That's fair. Grace walked out of the office, past Vanessa, who was now standing stiffly at the counter with her arms folded. Their eyes met. Vanessa looked away. This time, Grace didn't. She stepped outside, her head held high. She hadn't chosen this battle, but now that she was in it, she wouldn't back down. By the time Grace got home that evening, the weight of the day finally settled on her shoulders. She kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the couch, staring up at the ceiling. The encounter at the bridal boutique played on a loop in her head, the assistant's coldness, the shifting price, the public humiliation. But she also remembered Claire's apology. And the offer. She wasn't sure how she felt about any of it. Not yet. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, hey, babe. How did it go? Want to talk about it? She took a deep breath and typed back. Grace, it was awful, but also kind of powerful. I'll call you in a bit. She opened her social media app and stared at the blank status bar for a while. Then, almost instinctively, she began to type. Today, I went to a boutique I dreamed of visiting since I got engaged. Instead of joy, I got judged. The assistant refused to let me try on a dress unless I paid first. Then she tripled the price. She didn't even pretend to be subtle. It was clear. I wasn't the kind of bride she wanted in their showroom. I was humiliated, but I didn't stay silent. And I won't now, either. She paused, rereading her words, then hit post. What happened next, she could never have predicted. By morning, her post had exploded. Thousands of likes. Hundreds of shares. Dozens of comments, some outraged, others heartbroken. But more than anything, there were stories. Dozens of them. Other Black women. Asian women. Plus-sized brides. Queer couples. All sharing their own versions of Grace's experience in bridal stores, in high-end shops, in restaurants. She wasn't alone. Wow, she whispered as she scrolled. This is bigger than me. Her phone rang. It was Danielle, her best friend. Girl, you're going viral. Danielle squealed. And rightfully so. I mean, this is huge. People are fired up. And that dress store? They're being called out left and right. Grace rubbed her forehead. I didn't expect this. I just needed to say something. And you said it. With grace and fire. Danielle lowered her voice. Also, there's a journalist from Bridal Times who commented on your post. Wants to interview you. What? Check your DMs. Grace found the message. Sure enough, a blue check account had written. Hi Grace, I read your post and was deeply moved. If you're open to it, I'd love to feature your story in our next issue. You're not alone, and it's time the industry listened. She stared at the message for a long time. Was she ready for this? That afternoon, Grace stood in front of the mirror, holding her phone like a microphone. Okay, she whispered. Let's try this. She hit record. Hi, everyone. I didn't think I'd be making this video, but here we are. Yesterday, I was humiliated while trying to shop for a wedding dress. Today, I woke up to hundreds of stories from other people who faced the same thing. It shouldn't take a viral post for businesses to treat people with dignity, but maybe this is how change begins. She paused, swallowing emotion. I'm not telling this story for sympathy. I'm telling it because I believe in doing something about it. We deserve better. And if speaking up makes one future bride feel empowered to demand that better, then I've done what I came here to do. She ended the video, uploaded it, and set her phone down. The views began to roll in almost immediately. That evening, Grace received a call. It was Claire. "I saw your post," she said softly. "In the video. I'm grateful you spoke up. And I meant what I said. We're changing things." Grace stayed silent. "We've officially placed Vanessa on suspension," Claire continued. "And we've hired a consultant to conduct sensitivity training. Not just a box-checking thing. Something meaningful." Grace finally spoke. "That's good. But it's just a start." "I know. I was wondering," Claire hesitated. "Would you still consider being part of the campaign? We wanted to be about real brides. All kinds of brides. You could help shape it from the ground up." Grace didn't answer right away. She glanced at her phone, where messages kept lighting up her screen. The world was listening. For once, people were watching and ready to do something about it. "Let's talk," she said. Grace stood in front of the towering glass doors of Le Chateau Bridal once more, only this time, she wasn't a silent customer. She had been invited back, but on her terms. Inside, the boutique had changed, subtly but deliberately. A small sign near the entrance now read, "We welcome every bride. No exceptions." It was neat, polished, safe. But Grace didn't come for slogans. She came for substance. Claire greeted her with a warm but cautious smile. "Grace, thank you for coming." "I'm not here for photo ops," Grace said, holding her bag close to her side. "If this is just damage control, I'm out." Claire's face softened. "It's not. That's why I asked you here, not for a campaign shoot. For a conversation. With the staff. We've invited the whole team for a closed session this afternoon. Would you be willing to speak?" Grace blinked. "You want me to talk to them?" Claire nodded. "You're not just a story anymore, Grace. You're a voice people are listening to. I can bring in professionals to lead workshops, sure, but sometimes, real change comes from looking someone in the eye and hearing what their choices cost." Grace's stomach tightened. She wasn't a public speaker. She hadn't rehearsed anything. But she also knew this was an opportunity. Not for her, but for all the women like her who had walked into rooms and been told, without words, "You don't belong here." She inhaled slowly. "I'll do it." An hour later, the back room of the boutique had been converted into a modest seating area. Most of the staff sat in folding chairs, arms crossed, expressions guarded. Grace stood at the front, nerves coiling in her chest. Vanessa was there, too, back from suspension for this meeting, her posture stiff and unreadable. Grace cleared her throat. "I'm not here to shame anyone," she began. "I'm here to speak truth. Because what happened to me wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern, and I wasn't the first to experience it." She looked around the room, meeting eyes. "You might think you're just enforcing policies. But when those policies seem to shift depending on someone's skin color, you're not just following rules. You're upholding bias, whether you mean to or not." A ripple moved through the room. "I came into this boutique excited. Hopeful. I had a picture in my head of finding the dress. But I left feeling small. Undeserving. Like I had to prove I belonged before I could even zip up a gown." Vanessa shifted in her seat, but said nothing. Claire stood nearby, quiet. Grace continued, her voice stronger now. "I posted about my experience, and I received hundreds of messages from women who had been treated the same way. And that's what really hit me. Silence protects no one. It just lets the pattern continue." She turned to Vanessa. "You told me not to touch the dress. You made up a rule to keep me at a distance. Why?" Vanessa finally looked at her, and for the first time, her voice wasn't sharp, it was small. "I don't know. Maybe I judged. Maybe I assumed. It wasn't personal." "But it was," Grace said softly. "To me, it was very personal." The room fell silent. Then Claire stepped forward. "This conversation is uncomfortable. But it's necessary. Grace agreed to speak to us because we need to do better. Not just today, but every day." A staff member near the back raised her hand. "Can I say something?" Grace nodded. "I was working the day you came in. I didn't say anything. I watched it happen, and I stayed quiet. And I'm sorry." Grace gave a tight smile. "Thank you." Silence can hurt as much as action. But acknowledgement? That's the start of change. When the session ended, Claire walked Grace to the door. "You were powerful," she said. "I was honest," Grace replied. Claire handed her a small box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet engraved with one word, "Worthy." "I know you didn't come for gifts," Claire said quickly. "But this isn't a reward. It's a reminder. One I hope you'll wear with pride." Grace looked down at the bracelet, her eyes misting. "Thank you," she said. "But the real reward will be walking into places like this and never having to give a speech like that again." The sun broke through soft clouds on the morning of Grace Miller's wedding, casting golden light across the garden venue. Strings of white blossoms lined the aisle, and the gentle hum of violins filled the air. Guests filled their seats, their faces glowing with anticipation. Behind the scenes, Grace stood in front of a full-length mirror, taking it all in. The dress she wore shimmered like moonlight, silk crepe, off-shoulder, simple and regal. The very same dress she had first tried to reach for in Le Chateau Bridal. Only now, she had earned it not with a swipe of a credit card, but with her voice, her strength, and her refusal to back down. Danielle adjusted her veil with a soft smile. "You look like you walked out of a fairy tale. A fairy tale with a courtroom and a mic drop ending." Grace laughed, nerves and pride mingling in her chest. "I still can't believe everything that's happened. A year ago, I thought I'd just buy a dress and keep it moving." Danielle smirked. "Well, now you're on Bridal Time's list of top 10 voices changing the wedding industry. Not exactly a low-profile bride." Grace gave her a look. "I didn't ask for that." "No," Danielle said, pinning the last strand of hair. "But maybe it asked for you." Grace turned back to the mirror. She no longer saw the nervous, unsure woman who had walked into that boutique months ago. She saw someone who had found her voice in the most unexpected way and used it to open a door for others. The ceremony began. As Grace walked down the aisle, every eye turned to her, but she didn't shrink. She held her bouquet with grace, her head high. Each step a quiet declaration. "I belong. I always did." Marcus waited at the altar, tears in his eyes as he watched her approach. His smile was full of awe, not just because she looked beautiful, but because of everything she had become since that day. They exchanged vows under a floral arch, surrounded by family, friends, and a few unexpected guests, including Claire, who sat respectfully in the back row. After everything, Grace had invited her. "Redemption means more when people are willing to do the work," she had said. Claire had done the work. At the reception, Grace stood near the edge of the dance floor, sipping lemonade and watching people celebrate. The DJ played soft jazz as couples twirled and laughed. A woman approached her, late 30s, warm smile, hesitant eyes. She looked vaguely familiar. "Hi," the woman said. "I hope it's okay to introduce myself. I'm Alana. I messaged you after your post went viral. I told you how I was once told to leave a boutique because my tattoos made me look unfit to represent their brand." Grace nodded. "I remember. You said you left crying." "I did," Alana said, emotion thick in her voice. "But after your story, I went back. To a different place. I walked in with my head high and didn't let anyone make me feel like I didn't deserve to be a bride. I even found my dress." "That's amazing," Grace said softly. "It's because of you," Alana said. "You didn't just speak for yourself. You spoke for all of us." Grace felt her throat tighten. "Thank you. That means everything." As the evening drew on, Marcus led Grace onto the dance floor for their first dance. The guests cheered as the music swelled, but Grace barely heard them. All she could see was the man she loved and the world they were building, one where their future daughter could walk into any room and know she belonged. She rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you think things are really changing?" she asked quietly. He looked around the room, diverse, joyful, filled with people who had come together in love. "I think you helped start something. And once truth has a voice, it's hard to silence it again." They danced under the stars, the wind brushing past them like a whisper of everything that had come before. Grace had entered that bridal boutique months ago hoping to find a dress. Instead, she found a movement.